big data, and in particular, I think when we started, how are your organizations, from a CIO perspective, how are you consuming big data? And it was brought up in a conversation this morning. There's always been a strategy around data and analytics within organizations, and now we have kind of a different way to look at that, or different sets of data that we want to examine and pull some thoughts or some trending out of. Have those two strategies merged? How are they evolved? And maybe how are you treating them the same or differently?
I'll go first. There's been reporting, there's been analytics, but the reality is there was a lot of back-end work that was wasteful in a sort of a lean sense, right? The whole cleansing of data, ETL, reporting, and then someone has to go analyze what the reports say. And so if you think about, we had limitations, and you had to have contextual understanding of the situation to really interpret that data. With today's predictive analytics, machine learning models, Hadoop clusters, you can process information really, really fast. So, I've got examples of things that took us 4 hours of processing time that are down to 7 minutes. So now you have the ability to just ingest many more types of information, external information, user-generated content, whether it's emails or videos or texts, and extract that human contextual understanding out of that and create some machine learning. So the insights have been phenomenally valuable to us, and we're using them to improve efficiency of the company through manufacturing efficiencies, and we're also using them to drive growth as we think about resource allocation and sales. And we've got a predictive model that says these are the most probable places we'll get a design win based on a set of sales criteria. Allocate your resources this way. And we've seen significant growth in, when we've done that, the account revenue growth, because we've assigned people to the highest probability sale versus, the most frequently called on, or the biggest account, or some other rationale.
Yeah, so similarly at NetApp, I like to perhaps think about a world without any ETL and a world without any batch. And if you think about those two concepts and say, what could you do to your business processes if you didn't have to deal with those two technology, processes internally, you can make a lot of difference to the business and a lot of value. Because the whole concept of passing the data around, cleansing, it's not value add whatsoever. It consumes a lot of IT resource, a lot of processing time. Batch, you have to wait for the answers to come, and then you go and say, oh, I would have done this. So what we're doing internally is similar, with some of the Hadoop technologies. We're actually looking at information related to our install base so that we can improve our customer experience, because, we exist, to help our customers and partners. So that's one area where we've had a tremendous amount of focus to do predictive support, to look at, as Kim said, supply chain opportunities there, how we can do things differently, different options and services that we can provide to our customers. But we're also looking at some of the other in-memory analytics, predictive analytics, to really say, how can we make decisions while the business process is occurring versus waiting and saying, I would have done that. And we're looking at a lot of this really in our sales process to make our sales processes more efficient. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to make use of big data, big analytics, predictive analytics, and it's all about what you don't know, right? Finding those nuggets of information that you couldn't have processed before because it took too long, or maybe you did process it and the event already occurred. So moving it up in the life cycle so that you can make use of that bit of information that you just don't know at the time today.
And if I could jump in real quick as we transition to some of the OEM providers here too, is talk to me a little bit as a customer you have a number of phone home devices. You have a number of methods to communicate with my infrastructure in terms of what's going on in my infrastructure, how it's set up, how it's configured, issues maybe I'm going through. Is there a strategy within your organizations in that particular space to help me make better decisions on what I've deployed, how I've deployed it, or when I have maybe something that is getting ready to break or not function properly?
So at EMC, we've done that. From our perspective, we've announced jointly with VMware our storage analytics package. And we still do traditional management reporting. We have a management reporting suite, just like every storage vendor. But we now have a predictive analytics suite that will do things that will say things like, oh, based on your past history, it looks like you're going to run out of storage in 6 weeks. And here's how much you're going to run out of on this LUN, on this file system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that cascades from our high-end systems all the way into our lowest entry-level systems. And so that analytics we've brought into the customer base by specifically, in our case, looking at storage. We've also done it inside the company, though. We've done several things. In addition to having the traditional data analytics side, we've actually hired guys who really are data scientists versus the data analytics guys. So we have data scientists in-house. We've created for our customer base with our channel partners a data science program through our educational group and our global services team that can actually train people how to be a data scientist and how to complement your traditional analytics, whether it's what you're doing in Oracle or a data warehouse or on the SQL side, how to bolster that with real data scientists. And lastly, we've done some work with several universities to help fund and create curriculum. I think there's 20 different universities, like 5 or 6 on the West Coast, and the bulk of them are on the East Coast. But roughly 20 universities are involved to create curriculum so they can actually offer degrees through either computer science or IT management as a data scientist. So we've done it, specifically in our product, but we've also actually done it just overall. And it's something we've really been, I hate to use the pun, but EMC's been in big data in a really big way. And you see our ads all over the place, big data, big data, big data. And we've been doing it, and our own IT guys do it in-house. But we actually have data scientists also in line of business. So the marketing guys have some data scientists. The sales group's got some data scientists, not just sitting in IT. So the line of businesses, and this is part of that whole transition about who buys what in storage, as well as other technologies. The line of business buys a lot of technology now. Bring your own is not the only example. So we have data scientists sprinkled in the various functions as well as in the IT team.
So I'll kind of back into this a little bit, and at the risk of, I know there's a lot of geeks and folks in the audience of getting tomatoes thrown at me. I mean, our approach to it has really been on the infrastructure side. Is we want to get as autonomic an infrastructure as we possibly can. I kind of look at it as drone infrastructure, right? So taking care of itself, self-resilient, self-reliant. Because quite honestly, I mean, our thinking on this is that over time, IT is going to have less and less time to worry about that, and they're going to have to redirect their time thinking about things like BYOD and cloud and big data and what's happening there. So our approach to this throughout has been, how do we get more autonomic capability throughout the stack so that that's something that you can pretty much put on lights out, have it self-sustain itself, self-monitor, do all of those things, and so forth. Now, on the big data front, I guess a comment I'll make there is that I don't see this as a brand new phenomenon per se, because we've had large data sets, we've had large enterprise data warehouses for a period of time. I think the big difference now is that now we can think about from an affordability perspective because the technology has allowed it. So you see open source like Hadoop and Cassandra come into the marketplace. You see the technology in terms of some of the hyperscale clusters. This is kind of now moving out of the realm of the esoteric and the expensive and for the few into where it's much more democratic. You can use this across a much broader set of the data that you've had. So in a world where you don't have to do ETL and the batch processing and so forth, moving it into more of a real-time context is important. But a lot of this data, I would argue, is stuff that you've had already. In the case of HP, for example, and I would say it's probably the same for a lot of organizations, we capture things like call detail record data. Every time there's a customer user experience calling in for support, we record all that data. We keep that in, it used to be analog form. Now it's digitized. Now we want to go back and utilize that in a way where, again, and most of that data is not sitting nicely in some, SQL or Oracle table. It's sitting in a very raw or unstructured format, but there's value there because it has sentiment, it has context, it has the ability for you to take action. Now, the key thing here is how do you bring that forward so that instead of using it for training purposes or after the fact or in kind of a rear view mirror mode, do it where you can utilize that in a real-time context when you have that customer or that interaction right then and there. So the technology that has come forward has really started us rethinking about how do we take this stuff that in many cases has been in archival mode and start to utilize it much more in real-time capability. And that's been the big thing. But I will tell you, I mean, the big, and I think my counterpart from EMC has said this, I mean, it's a lot more of, now we're dealing with what questions do you ask of the data, because it used to be we were very clear on the types of things we were looking for because, we had a very specific set of tools to get at it. But now that we have more capability, and this is where the data scientists and other folks come in, where they're starting to advise around, what can you interrogate of the data that you weren't asking for from before? And this has been a critical part for us in looking at that.
Can I?
Real quick, yeah.
Yeah, my comment is really quick. I would say that the one dimension of the big data question that I want to make sure that I think we all need to think about here is not just about big data or getting relevant information out of unstructured data in data lakes, let's say, but it's also about fast data. And so really, how do you get information, right, the telemetries that are coming out of all these devices that are going to be enabled and put on the internet and are going to be able to phone home and provide data? How do you reconcile and make meaningful business decisions at a very, very fast speed, reconciling the big data, pool of data and the fast data? And that is definitely something that VMware and EMC are working on together with Pivotal. But I would say if I think about one thing that the big data question is going to really change all of our lives and our children's and grandchildren's lives, it will be this being able to get meaningful, real-time intelligence from both big data and fast data.